The human Starship Explorer 1 slowly entered the orbit of a distant planet called Zarella. The planet was large, blue-green, and covered in strange glowing forests and crystal cities. From the windows of the ship, Captain Jake Morgan looked down in wonder. "This is it," he said. "The home of the Zarellans." Jake was a brave and friendly man in his 30s. He had dark brown hair, a strong jaw, and a smile that made others feel calm. He was sent by Earth as a peace ambassador to meet a new alien species. The Zarellans had never met humans before. They had invited them after seeing human signals in space. Jake's mission was clear: be polite, learn their culture, and open peaceful talks. He wore a clean uniform with the Earth symbol on his chest, a blue and green globe with a white dove. When Explorer 1 landed, a group of tall aliens waited outside. Their skin was smooth and silver, their eyes large and glowing blue. They wore long robes and had no hair. They looked calm, smart, and serious. One of them stepped forward. "Welcome, human," she said in a soft, musical voice. "I am Lyra, ambassador of Zarella. Please follow me." Jake smiled and nodded. "Thank you, Lyra. I am honored to be here." As they walked through the city, Jake noticed how clean and quiet everything was. The buildings were made of shining crystal. Streets were smooth and had no cars, only floating platforms. The Zarellans walked in perfect lines, spoke only when needed, showed no emotion. "They are like living computers," Jake thought. Inside a round hall, Lyra offered him a seat. Other Zarellans sat quietly, watching. Floating screen appeared, showing Earth images, people laughing, hugging, dancing, playing music. "We have studied your species," Lyra said. "You are emotional, unpredictable, and curious." Jake chuckled. "That's one way to say it." Lyra tilted her head slightly. "Tomorrow, we invite you to take part in a cultural experiment. We call it the mating test." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Mating test?" "Yes," she said calmly. "It is a study of how your kind bonds with others. Do not worry. It is simple and not dangerous." Jake laughed. "All right, sounds interesting." Lyra blinked slowly. "Good. The event will be recorded and shared across Zarella for educational purposes." Jake paused. "Wait, it's going to be public?" "Yes. Is that a problem?" He smiled awkwardly. No. What?" "Just surprised, that's all." Later in his guest room, Jake contacted his team on Explorer 1. "Guys, they want me to take a mating test tomorrow. They say it's about human bonding." His friend and science officer, Dr. Perez, laughed. "Maybe they think you're a dating expert." Jake grinned. "I'll do my best not to mess it up." That night, Jake slept under a glowing dome that showed the stars. He wondered what the test would be like. It had been trained for diplomacy, but not for alien mating tests. The next morning, the sun rose over the crystal towers of Zarella. A soft bell rang, and a floating assistant led Jake to the great observation hall. It was a huge, round room with smooth white floors, shining walls, and thousands of Zarellans seated quietly in rows. Floating orbs recorded everything Jake took. A deep breath. Lyra stood at the center, calm and graceful. She wore a silver robe with a single blue gem in the middle. "Welcome to the mating test," she said. "We will observe the human subject in various bonding activities. Please begin." Jake looked around confused. "Begin what?" Suddenly, a small scene appeared, a picnic table, a flower, and soft music. "Please offer the flower to me, as you would to a companion," Lyra said. Jake picked up the flower and smiled. "Okay, here you go. I think this suits you." Lyra took it gently and nodded. The scenes kept changing. When one Jake had to tell a joke, another he had to sing a short song. He danced, complimented, and even acted out a scene where he comforted someone who was sad. Lyra played the other role each time. The Zarellans watched without moving, but Jake felt their eyes on him. It was like being in a silent stadium. In the final part, an older Zarellan entered. He walked slowly with a cane, while the cameras rolled. The elder dropped a small book. Jake quickly stepped forward. picked up the book, and helped him walk. Lyra looked surprised. That was not part of the test. Jake smiled. Didn't seem right to just stand there. A soft humming sound began. It was not music. It was applause in Zuralan style. The crowd began glowing in waves of light. The walls vibrated with a low sound. It felt like the whole planet was clapping without hands. Jake looked around in shock. What's going on? Lyra stepped forward. You have passed the first stage, and the people of Zarela are cheering. Jake blinked.
What?
Me, Lyra smiled, the tiniest curve on her lips. Yes, you are. It's different. Captain Jake Morgan stood in the middle of the giant white hall, still surprised by what had just happened. All around him, the Zarelans were glowing in waves of soft colors. It was their way of cheering, and Jake could feel the vibrations under. His feet, it was like the ground was humming with energy. He turned to Lyra, the tall and calm ambassador, who stood next to him. I thought this was just a small test, Jake said with a nervous smile. But that felt like a full show. Lyra nodded slowly. It is a test, but not a small one. You are helping us learn what your species values. Emotion, connection, expression. Jake scratched his head. Yeah, we humans do all that. Sometimes, too much. Lyra looked at him with curious eyes. And yet, you help others even when no one tells you to, like the elder who dropped the book. Jake shrugged. It's just basic kindness. The room changed again. The floor lights shifted, and a new setup appeared. This time, it looked like a small kitchen. A table with 2 chairs, 2 cups, some kind of alien food in shining bowls. Lyra gestured. Now we continue with bonding through shared meals. Please, sit with me. Jake sat down across from her. The floating orbs continued recording. He tried the food, tasted a bit like sweet mushrooms. So, you guys eat like this often? Jake asked. We consume energy blocks normally, Lyra said. But this setting is created to mimic human social habits. Jake smiled. Eating together is a big thing for us. Families, friends, couples, we eat to connect. Interesting, Lyra said. You do not eat only for fuel.
Nope.
Sometimes we even argue over what to eat. She blinked slowly. That sounds inefficient, but also alive. After the meal, another scene appeared. This time, soft music played in the background. Lyra stood and raised her hand. This section is about physical expression. Would you dance with me, as humans do? Jake chuckled. I'm not the best dancer, but sure. They stepped onto a round, glowing platform. Jake gently held her hand. He moved slowly, just like he remembered from school dances on Earth. At first, Lyra was stiff, but then she copied his movements step by step. Zarelans in the crowd made soft pulses of light. Some leaned forward. A few touched their faces in wonder. When the dance ended, Lyra tilted her head. What did you feel during that? Jake thought. For a moment, it's peaceful, connected, like we understood each other without speaking. Lyra looked down at her hand. That is very new to us. Jake smiled. That's what dancing does. The test moved on. More scenes appeared. A campfire setting where Jake told a funny story from his time in school. Then a scene of sadness, where he acted like he lost something important, and Lyra responded as a friend. When Jake pretended to cry, many in the crowd gasped. When Lyra reached out and gently touched his shoulder, a glowing ring spread across the room. It was clear the Zarelans were feeling something. Something new after the final scene. The lights dimmed. Lyra stepped forward and faced the crowd. This concludes the bonding demonstration, she said. The human has completed every part of the test. The glowing in the room became brighter, pulsing like a heartbeat. A low, soft sound filled the air. Not a word, not a song, but something deep. Jake could feel it in his chest. He looked around. Is that another cheer? Lyra nodded. Yes, and louder this time. Jake stepped back, confused. Why? I just acted like myself. I wasn't trying to win anything. Lyra turned to him. her voice calm but serious. "Captain Morgan, you may not understand yet, but you have done something very important." Jake blinked. "Like what?" "Zarellans do not know laughter, do not share feelings. We work, study, and survive. Is all for thousands of years, we have forgotten emotion. But today, watching you, something changed." Jake looked at her face. For the first time, there was a small softness in her eyes. "You mean the people felt something?" Lyra nodded. "Yes, they felt curiosity, surprise even, warmth." Jake sat down on the edge of the platform, trying to understand.
Oh.
"I did was share normal human things. That is what makes it special," Lyra said. "You did not try to impress, you just cared. You were real. That is what we lost long ago." Jake sighed. "Well, I didn't expect to change a planet today." Lyra took a slow breath. "You may have changed more than that," a voice called from across the hall. It was another Zarellan, wearing a gold robe. He stepped forward and bowed. "This human has passed all stages of the ancient test," he said. "It is the first successful result in over 5,000 cycles." Jake stood up. "Wait, you've done this before?" "Yes," the elder said. "We invited other species. None showed true bonding. Until now." The lights glowed brighter. The crowd stood and raised their arms. From the ceiling, beams of light shined down like stars. The ground trembled with joy. Jake turned to Lyra. "What happens now?" She looked at him quietly for a moment. "Now, the planet will talk. And you may become part of something much bigger than you ever expected." Captain Jake Morgan stood still in the center of the glowing hall. The sound around him was not like anything he had ever heard before. It was deep, soft, and full of feeling. The glowing lights above and around the Zarellans pulsed slowly like waves in the sea. "This is their way of cheering?" Jake asked. Lyra stood beside him and nodded. "Yes, this is the second time they have done it today. That has never happened before." Jake rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm just a guy who told some stories, danced a little, and helped an old alien. Didn't think that was special." Lyra looked into his eyes. "It is special, Captain. You showed what it means to care. That is something we Zarellans forgot. Long ago." Suddenly, the white walls of the room turned clear like glass. Jake gasped as he saw thousands, no, millions of glowing dots floating outside. They were ships, buildings, and Zarellans gathered in the sky and on rooftops. All of them were watching the test live. "I thought this was a small study," Jake whispered. "But this is the whole planet." Lyra nodded. "Yes, it was never just about science. It was about hope." Jake turned back to the crowd. Some Zarellans were now mimicking human behaviors. A few were waving. Some were placing hands on their hearts. One group even started clapping with their hands, though awkwardly. Lyra tilted her head. "They are trying to copy you. They want to feel what you feel." A younger Zarellan child came close to the stage, holding a simple drawing. It showed two stick figures, one human and one Zarellan, holding hands. Jake stepped down and took the paper. "Thank you," he said with a gentle smile. The child's skin glowed yellow, a new color Jake hadn't seen before. Lyra looked surprised. "That color means joy, pure joy. It was last recorded during our ancient festivals." Jake sat on the edge of the platform again. He looked around, thinking deeply. "You said other species failed this test? Why?" Lyra stood beside him. "They were logical like us. They answered with facts. They followed steps, but none showed kindness without reason. You helped, laughed, and gave, even when no one asked you to." Jake looked down at the drawing in his hand. "So, humans passed the test just by being human?" "Yes," Lyra said softly. That's why the crowd cheered. Then a loud tone echoed through the hall. The walls changed again, showing the Zarellan Council. They were old, wise leaders who had ruled for many cycles. Their faces were serious but curious. The High Counselor spoke. "Captain Jake Morgan, you are the first to pass the mating test in our history. Your actions have started change across our world. We wish to speak with you." Jake stood up slowly. "Of course, sir." Lyra placed a hand on his arm. "Speak. From your heart That is what they need. The room changed into a quiet chamber. The council sat in a circle, glowing softly. Jake stood in the middle. "Tell us," the High Counselor said, "why do humans care for others, even when it brings them no reward?" Jake thought for a moment. Because it's the right thing to do. We don't always get it right, but we try. We're built to connect, to laugh, cry, love, and help. That's what makes us human. Another counselor asked, "And you do this with strangers?" Jake nodded. "Yes, sometimes with enemies too, because kindness spreads. One small action can change a life." The council fell silent. Then the High Counselor spoke again. "Captain Morgan, we have made a decision. You are more than a guest. You are now a symbol of life, of emotion, of a future we thought we'd lost." Jake blinked. "A symbol." Lyra stepped forward. "They want to make you an emotional ambassador, a bridge between our worlds." Jake's eyes widened. "Me? I'm just a guy from New Mexico." The High Counselor smiled gently. "You are a reminder that even in a galaxy of silence, one voice of laughter can echo forever." Suddenly, a new wave of cheering started outside. This time it was louder, brighter, and longer. The skies above the planet sparkled as light patterns formed, giant shapes of humans and Zerlons standing together. Back in the Great Hall, the crowd was now dancing, slowly copying Jake's movements. Children laughed. Adults hugged gently. Emotions were rising everywhere. Jake returned to Lyra's side. "This wasn't just a test, was it?" "No," she replied. "It was a search for something we lost long ago. And you found it. In a joke, a dance, and a helping hand?" She smiled slightly. "Yes, and now Zarella has hope again." Jake looked out at the cheering world. He had come to be part of a study. He had taken the test, thinking it was just strange alien fun. Now he realized something deeper. He had changed an entire planet, just by being human. Captain Jake Morgan sat quietly in the garden of Zarella's central tower. The crystal trees around him gave off a soft blue glow. The air was calm, and a cool breeze passed over the smooth stone floor. It had been 2 days since the mating test. All over the planet, Zarellans were trying new things, smiling, laughing, touching each other gently, and even painting pictures. Jake had seen kids drawing suns and hearts. Some adults tried dancing in the streets. It was like the whole world had opened a door it didn't know was locked. Jake looked at the small flower in his hand. It was shaped like a star and changed colors when touched. He smiled. Suddenly he heard footsteps behind him. It was Lyra, the Zerlin ambassador. She was wearing a long silver robe, but her face looked softer than before. "You are deep in thought," she said. Jake nodded, just thinking about how fast things are changing. Lyra sat beside him. She brought light to our world. But now, you deserve the full truth. Jake turned to her. "What do you mean?" She looked at the sky for a moment, then back at him. The mating test was not only about bonding, it was also a hidden test of survival. Jake frowned. "Survival. Yes," she said. "Our race is slowly fading. Not in numbers, but in spirit. We are not sick in the body, but in the soul." Jake stayed quiet and listened carefully. "For centuries we removed emotion from our society," Lyra continued. "We believed feelings caused war, confusion, and mistakes. So we erased them from our language, from our education, even from our DNA." Jake's eyes widened. "Wait, you removed emotions on purpose?" Lyra nodded slowly. "That it would make us perfect. And for a while it did. Our cities grew, our machines worked, and our minds became sharper. But something was lost." Jake looked down at the flower in his hand. "Your hearts." "Yes," Lyra whispered. "Now, fewer Zerlons are born each year. Relationships are cold. Creativity is gone. Children don't play. Our civilization is quiet. Too quiet." Jake looked back at her. "So the mating test was really a search. You were looking for someone to bring back feeling." Lyra nodded. Exactly. We reached out to many species over the years. We invited them to take part in the test, but none passed. Jake blinked. Because they were like you? Too logical. Too focused on power, or science, or trade, Lyra said. Then we saw human signals from space. We saw your music, your laughter, your art. We had hope. Jake leaned back against the smooth tree. Should have just asked. Lyra gave a soft smile. We didn't know how. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Jake asked, "Why didn't you tell me the truth before?" "'Cause we didn't want to change the outcome," she said. "If we told you it was important, you might try too hard. But we wanted to see your true self." Jake laughed softly. "So you tricked me into saving your world?" "In a way," Lyra said gently. "But you did it freely. You passed every test, not by thinking, but by feeling." Jake looked at her closely. "How are you feeling now?" Lyra paused. Her eyes shimmered slightly. "I feel warmth, curiosity, a strange pull toward the things you say and do. It is both strange and beautiful." Jake nodded. "That's what we call connection." Turned toward him. "Captain Morgan, the council has asked me to tell you something." "What is it?" "They want you to stay." Jake's heart skipped. "Stay on Zarella?" "Yes, as our first emotional ambassador. You would teach, guide, and help us reconnect. With feelings, you would not be alone. Others from Earth can join later, but you would be the first." Jake leaned forward. "That's a big decision." Lyra lowered her head. "We understand. You have your world, your people, but we also believe this is your gift." Just then, Jake's communicator buzzed. It was Dr. Perez from Explorer 1. "Jake, Earth Command just sent a message, Perez. Said they say not to get too involved. They don't want us affecting alien cultures too much." Jake sighed. "Too late for that?" "Yeah," Perez replied. "But it's your call, Captain." Jake ended the call and looked at Lyra. She was waiting silently. He stood up and walked toward the edge of the garden. He looked out at the crystal city glowing in the twilight. In the distance, he saw groups of Zeralon children laughing and chasing a floating orb, something that would have never happened just days ago. He took a deep breath. "I came here as an explorer," Jake said, "but maybe I was meant to be something more." He turned back to Lyra. "I'll stay. Not forever, but long enough to help." Lyra rose slowly. "Then we welcome you, not as a guest, but as a friend." Suddenly, a soft sound began in the sky. Zarellan lights rose above the buildings. A new shape formed, a glowing symbol of two hands touching, one human and one Zarellan. From every corner of the city, a new sound echoed. It was joy. Captain Jake Morgan stood on the balcony of the Zarellan Tower, looking out at the vast city below. The glowing lights of Zarella had never been so bright. And for the first time in many years, Jake saw hope in the faces of the Zarellans. The laughter and joy that filled the streets were something he had never expected to witness. The people of Zarella were changing. They were beginning to feel again. It was all because of one human man, Jake. Lyra stepped beside him, her silver robe flowing gently in the breeze. "It is beautiful, isn't it?" Jake nodded slowly. "It is. Feels like I'm watching a world be reborn." The Zarellans had embraced what Jake had shown them. They'd begun to smile, laugh, and even create. Their culture was slowly shifting from one of pure logic to one of feeling. Music was being played in the streets, art was being painted on walls, and children were laughing in ways they had not in centuries. But now, Jake faced a decision. The Zarellan High Council had offered him a permanent place on their world, a role as their first emotional ambassador. His job would be to teach them the ways of human connection, to help them rebuild what they had lost. Their hearts, it was a powerful role, but it came with great responsibility. Jake was torn. "Lyra," Jake began, "I appreciate everything you've done. You've shown me a side of the universe I never knew existed. But I'm not sure I can stay here forever." Lyra's eyes softened, and she placed a hand on his shoulder. "I understand. Earth is your home. You have a duty to your people." Jake shook his head. "It's not just that. Earth Command has sent a message. They don't want me getting too involved. Here, they're worried that by staying, I might affect Zarella's future too much. They think I could change your culture too quickly. Lyra studied him carefully. And what do you think? Jake looked out over the city again, his mind racing. He thought of Earth, the people he loved, his home planet. He had a life there, a future. But what was it worth if he didn't feel alive? If the world was cold and emotionless, like Zarella had been, I think... Jake paused. I think the universe is telling me something. I came here to help make peace, to build connections. But what I've learned is that sometimes peace isn't just about diplomacy. It's about understanding each other, sharing joy and showing compassion. Lyra nodded. It is the bond that holds all civilizations together, but what if I stay here and my people don't understand? What if they think I've abandoned them? Jake asked. Lyra's voice was gentle but firm. You are not abandoning them. You are offering them something new. When you leave this planet, you will carry the lessons you've learned here, and you will teach others about the power of emotion, of connection, that will help Earth just as much as it helps Zarella. Jake turned back to face her. And what about you? What about Zarella? Lyra looked down at the ground. Has been lost for so long. It will take time for us to heal. But with your help, we will learn. And maybe one day we will be able to stand beside Earth as true partners. Jake took a deep breath. The decision weighed heavily on him. He had never thought he would be faced with something like this. It wasn't just a choice between Earth and Zarella. It was about what kind of person he wanted to be, and what kind of future he wanted to build. In that moment, he knew what he had to do. I'll stay, Jake said quietly. But not forever. I'll help you get started, teach you what I know about feeling. And when the time is right, I'll go back to Earth. I have to keep my promise to my people. But you need someone to guide you. I think I can help you build a future. Lyra's face lit up with gratitude. Thank you, Jake. You do not know how much this means to us. Jake smiled and nodded. I think I'm starting to understand. Just then, a group of Zarellan children ran past them, laughing and chasing. A floating ball. The ball bounced off one of the nearby trees, and a few of the children stumbled and fell into each other, giggling. It was the first time Jake had seen such a sight. It was messy, it was imperfect, but it was alive. See that? Jake said, pointing to the children. That's what it's all about. That's the future you're building. And I want to help you make sure it's a good one. Lyra followed his gaze and smiled. Yes, that is the future. Thank you, Jake. Looked at her and saw something new in her eyes. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was understanding. They were both learning together in their own way. He turned back toward the glowing city below and sighed. He had made his choice. It wasn't an easy one, but it felt right. He was going to stay on Zarella. He was going to help them rebuild what they had lost. And, in the process, he hoped to help himself discover what it meant to truly connect with others, to feel, to care, and to love. The journey was just beginning. The months passed quickly on Zarella. Captain Jake Morgan had settled into his new role as the planet's first emotional ambassador. He spent his days teaching the Zarellans about human emotions, joy, love, laughter, sorrow, and everything. In between, they were curious, eager to learn, and sometimes confused by the overwhelming nature of feelings. But they were changing, and Jake could see it every day. Lyra, who had once been cold and emotionless, was now full of warmth. She smiled more often. She laughed at Jake's jokes, and, occasionally, when things became too much, she would shed a tear, something that had never happened to her before. Jake had become not just a teacher, but a friend, a guide, and a partner in this strange and wonderful journey. They worked together, side by side, building a new future for Zarella, one where emotions weren't seen as weaknesses but strengths. He wasn't just teaching them the basics of human connection, he was showing them the beauty of life itself. But, despite all the progress, Jake knew it wasn't going to be easy. Change was never quick. It took time, and it took patience. Zarella's deep, logical traditions couldn't be wiped away in an instant. One morning, As Jake walked through the streets of the capital, he noticed something different. The usual cold silence of the Zerlins had been replaced by a buzz of activity. People were talking to each other, sharing food, laughing, and even holding hands. The streets were alive in a way they had never been before. Jake smiled to himself. He had helped them start this, but they were the ones who had to carry it forward. They were the ones who had to choose a new path. As he entered the central hall, Lyra met him at the door. She was wearing a simple robe, but her face was radiant with excitement. "Jake," she said, her voice full of energy, "you need to come? With me, the council has called a meeting. They want to speak with you." Jake raised an eyebrow. "A meeting with the council? About what?" "I'll explain on the way," Lyra said, taking his arm and leading him quickly through the halls. Zerlin Council was a small group of ancient leaders who had once been the keepers of all knowledge and wisdom on the planet. They had led the Zerlons for thousands of cycles, but they had always kept themselves apart from the people. They believed that emotion was a distraction, and they had never felt the need to change. But now, things were different.
Ow.
The Council had seen the changes in their world. It had seen how the people were embracing feelings and finding joy. And, perhaps most importantly, it had seen how the connection between humans and Zerlons had become stronger each day. When Jake and Lyra entered the council chamber, the room was filled with the sound of soft, melodic hums. The counselors were seated in a circle, their glowing eyes focused on Jake as he walked in. The High Counselor, an older Zerellan with silver skin and long, flowing robes, stood and bowed. "Captain Morgan," he said, his voice full of respect, "we have watched the changes on our world, and we have seen the effects your presence has had. You have brought our people back to life." Jake felt a lump form in his throat. "I didn't do it alone. I had help. People of Zarella have embraced change. I've just shown them what it means to feel." The High Counselor nodded. "Yes, but it is because of you that we were able to understand. You have been a bridge between two worlds. And now we must ask you for something more." Jake's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "We've decided to open Zarella to the universe," the High Counselor said. "For too long, we have isolated ourselves. We've relied only on logic and science. But now we see that connection, real, emotional connection, is the key to building stronger relationships with other civilizations. And we want you to lead the way." Jake looked around at the other counselors. They all nodded in agreement. "Want me to be your ambassador to the universe?" he asked, trying to process what they were saying. "Yes," the High Counselor replied. "You are the one who has shown us the way. You have taught us that the greatest strength is in sharing, in caring, and in connecting with others. We ask you to continue this work, not just here on Zarella, but with all the worlds of the galaxy." Jake was stunned. This was more than he had ever imagined when he first arrived on Zarella. He had come to help with a simple test, to represent Earth, to open the door to peace. But now, he was being asked to be a leader, not just for Zarella, but for the universe. He took a deep breath. "I'm honored. I never thought I'd be in a position like this." Lyra stepped forward and placed her hand on his shoulder. "Jake, you have changed the course of history. This is your moment." The High Counselor nodded. "But this is not just about you, Captain Morgan. This is about the future. About showing the galaxy that no matter how different we are, the connections we make through emotions, through care, are what unite us all." Jake looked around the room, seeing the counselors nodding in agreement. He had come to Zarella to teach, but now he realized he had a much bigger purpose. He had started a movement. He had sparked a fire of hope in a place that had long been cold. And now, the whole planet, and maybe even the entire galaxy, would benefit from what he had shared. "I'll do it," Jake said, his voice steady. "I'll be your ambassador. I'll help guide the universe toward a future of connection, of understanding, and of love." The room erupted in applause. It was a new kind of cheer. It was not just a celebration of the past, but a promise for the future. The whole planet of Zarella, the entire galaxy, was cheering, and for the first time it wasn't just a sound. It was a feeling. Jake had made his choice. He would stay on Zarella, not just as a teacher, but as a leader. He would help the galaxy learn what it meant to be truly connected. And together, They would build a future where no one, no matter where they came from, would ever feel alone again.